It's rock and roll.
Welcome to the Look It's Rock and Roll podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill. Today we've got Bill and Andy, which means we're talking W.A.S.P. Well, Bill's got the background going. I like that one. I'm obviously giving a very subtle hint to which album we're going to be discussing. Sequentially, last episode we talked about KFD, and we skipped Double Live Assassins because we're going to save that for the next episode and combine both live albums, which followed the studio albums at the end of the century, beginning of the new century. So for now, we're just going to get stuck into the 1999 release. I can't ever get this thing to work with the background.
Yes.
Helldorado.
You had
There
the
you
double.
go. Perfect.
Double.
Oh, you got the combo. There you go. So, Helldorado came out in May 1999. I remember it well, because back then I was really excited that there was another W.A.S.P. album coming out, especially with my response and what it had been to the previous one. I was really hopeful that they were going to return to what I considered form and sound like Still Not Black Enough again. I was very, very wrong. As Blackie Lawless, I think, succinctly put it, this album is like Mean Man, Blind in Texas, and Animal all rolled up in one. Andy, when did you get Helldorado, and what were your initial impressions of it?
Well, like you just said, we just went through the KFD, so you know how that was, and it again, like I had posted, we talked about last. I actually like KFD, even though I don't really know industrial and never heard about industrial rock at the time. So, anyways, when the album came out, I was kind of like grabbed it and I started listening to it. The first thing I noticed, it has the same thing at KFD. It's almost like they didn't turn it up enough. And I'm not a pro or an expert, but to me, it sounds fine, but it's still not as loud as it could be. You know what I'm saying? Am I off on that, Bill? Maybe you know more than I do on that.
Well, for starters, I've got a vinyl that I haven't spun. I've been listening to digital files of it, but the digital files have sounded great. So I don't know about an actual CD pressing. And that's the thing is, 1999, they were still jumbling around a lot of CD mastering and stuff like that. They hadn't really nipped that in the bud to where what ended up being the loudness wars, to where, you're used to having something blow your eardrums out. But I thought this was a lot less fatiguing than KFD. And if I could go ahead and elaborate on my opinion of the record, I've only had it a couple months, but where Kiss always gets their description wrong about this one's going to be the next Destroyer, I think Blackie, from what Julian quoted, he nailed it on the head. That is like a perfect description of this album. And, after Still Not Black Enough, which was more like Headless Children, and then KFD was like nothing else, I was pleasantly surprised with this album. And it's kind of like the band pointed to a calendar date in 1986 and said, set the time machine for that. And they went straight back to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just didn't think there's like the drums are turned up like enough, a little bit more. They need to be turned up. I don't know. Maybe that's me.
And if you're going to ask me about drums, I had that fascination with the annoying crash cymbal on Still Not Black Enough. That cymbal is still there, but it's used so much more tastefully on this record that it doesn't bother me. On Still Not Black Enough, I was worn out by the first song that they were hitting that cymbal so much, but they are definitely sampled drums. But they could have been a little louder, but I think it's a really balanced production altogether.
That was one of the things that struck me immediately. I mean, Blackie tells the story of where he was at headspace-wise in the liner notes of the album, at least on the promo I got. So it was very much that he was going back in time, that he was trying to capture that same kind of energy and vibe that he had, say, in 1985. I think he specifically says he didn't try to recreate the first album with this recording. But something that strikes me on the sound, Andy, is not the drums, and Bill, is not the loudness wars. This sounds like a very 1980s produced album. It can play right next to Last Command perfectly in terms of its sonics. As you said about the loudness wars, it is not brick wall to death. So to me, there's a lot of definition in the sounds, which suits it much better to the production than the previous album. So all of a sudden you go from that very dense listen to that of the previous album to one which is just a traditional rock and roll album that's allowed to breathe, and the drums are very much taking a background throughout the album to guitars, and more guitars.
Well, that's what I mean. And also too, man, Chris Holmes is there. And I gotta say, man, it's really, when you listen to it, it's probably one of the underrated W.A.S.P albums in the catalog in ways, because I think when the KFD hit, people were just stunned. So it was either you really liked it or you really hated it. Kind of like the Kiss, Elder thing. You either love it or you hate it, And I think a lot of, like they said, KFD, it turned a lot of people off. And then when this album came out, the people are already gone, So when this album came out, there were people I know. I'm like, hey, look at this KFD new W.A.S.P. And they're like, I don't know, after the last one. I'm like, well, yeah, listen to this though. It's a lot different. It sounds kind of, that raw, like you said, raw nastiness. The old style. The first album, second album, third album, kind of, mixed. Actually, I think this can go kind of near the Electric Circus in that way. When I think about it, with the songs and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think this one would slot in even more perfectly before Last Command, like in between the first two albums, because in terms of its kind of aggression, it's closer to Winged Assassins than it is to, kind of the smoother stuff that started coming out. He had a lot more of his pop kind of hooks coming in for Last Command.
Yeah, that's true if you want to look at it that way. But I love his guitar. I think it's, if you listen to, when we get into the songs, Chris Holmes' guitar work, man, it's awesome. He really does a really good job on this, man. It's unbelievable, It's just, it's one of those albums, I think it just came out and just got shuffled under the table.
Well, consider the record label that they were on by this time, CMC International, distributed by BMG. It was advertised, which is surprising. I was actually sitting on eBay earlier, just looking at what sort of Helldorado merch is out there. There's right top of the page is a 11x17 promo CD store poster for $3.99. I'm like, yeah. Andy would like that. So,
that's my fault. That's $3.99.
All the W.A.S.P stuff is expensive if you can't find it. And even when I've gone to like record stores or record stores, people, there are still some out there. Anyway, he said, even if you go to these shops, the first thing I say, either got anything Kiss or I look for the Kiss, and the second thing is W.A.S.P. The two, and they look at me with my head. I go from Kiss to W.A.S.P. and some of them look at me strange. I'm like, yep. I'm like, that's my second favorite band is W.A.S.P. You got anything? They're like, no. And if we do, it's gone. So there are people out there here and there grabbing this stuff, but there's not much stuff out there. It wasn't like a mass produced production of stuff when they did stuff. I think this is where Blackie kind of dropped the ball. I understand he says he didn't want to do all that kind of stuff, but I don't know, to each his own, to each his own, what can you say? But I didn't really see too much promotion on this album at all. I saw absolutely nothing, zero. I didn't see anything in magazines. If you look back through some of the old magazines, I still don't see anything. I absolutely see nothing. Yeah. 1990.
And I didn't know that CMC International was the original release. Excuse me for a second. But CMC, if I can recall correctly, is like the original Legacy Act label, where I remember that Styx was on CMC at one point, and they were picking up all of those '80s acts that wasn't really pounding the numbers out. So the fact that they actually included W.A.S.P is pretty amazing. But then
Yeah.
again, that thing is, you went look. You had to do what you were doing, Andy. You had to go look for it because they weren't promoting everything. They would have lost their ass if they'd had to promote every band that they had on their label, because they had some really big name bands.
And I think they relied on that big name band more to sell itself, because I just had a quick look. Judas Priest, of course, was on there for Jugulator, and the other one, Demolition. Dokken was on there, so I think for Shadow Life. So, the bands themselves had already a built-in fan base, but what is it, Metal Edge? I'd stopped buying music magazines mostly by that time, except for, picking up old stuff from the past. So I wasn't staying current. I was current on W.A.S.P because I was still following them online. As we mentioned, last episode, W.A.S.P Nation or W.A.S.P Nest, whatever it was, the website back then, you could still find out news. I was still going to Amoeba and record stores, and, there were a few releases that I wanted to find, archival wise, that had me still looking through the W.A.S.P, section, and occasionally finding something that, I may not have known, whether it was a single or whatnot. But let's dig into this album track by track. It's going to go pretty fast this episode today, I think. So let's get going. Bill, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on Drive By?
Is it Andy or me?
You.
Okay. All right. Well,
He likes to wait.
Would be, what latter day W.A.S.P album would not be complete without an intro spoken word section in it, and you couldn't help but giggle during some of it, but really, I still think it's better than the big welcome from Inside the Electric Circus.
We'll fight about that one.
And it was a pretty good prelude to the next track. That's all I got.
Yeah, great intro, Andy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go against Bill. The Electric Circus, Inside Electric is still better. The intro to that is still better. But yeah, that's what they do. That's what he does. He's, like you said, he's spoken stuff and does a little thing, and it it goes with kind of with the song. So it works. And they needed something. Right? Here we go. Well, W.A.S.P was kind of back in the old ways, and this is how they kind of would do that kind of stuff. Even when they do stuff live, that's what they do. They have all these little intro things, and bam, right into a song. So, so it works.
You saw them around this time. Did they use this as the intro to the show at that point?
Yes, they did. And they went right into Helldorado. So, yep. And there is, I think, there might be some bootlegs up there, or Key something. Where is it?
The Key, live at the Key Club, obviously, which was the Sting, is up on YouTube, so you can see the intro. I was actually just watching that right before, and I couldn't remember if they'd done Drive By right at the beginning of Helldorado. Both of you are Kiss fans, and another album came out around this time in 1998 called Psycho Circus, and it had a bit of an intro going for it as well. Do you think Blackie does a better intro than Kiss has ever managed to do? Because Psycho Circus was one of the few where they really tried to do kind of a carnival theme-esque intro. I think he nails this. It's like Phantom of the Opera meets Christine for the intro. And some of the spoken word stuff is a little bit cornball, but it sets the tone for where he's going very well. So what are your thoughts on that kind of Kiss connection, Bill?
Well, let's see. We have a carnival and we have washing dishes versus what Blackie's doing. Oh, I think I'm going to go with Blackie. Yeah, he does it a lot better. He has he like you said, he sets the tone. It's like, this is what's going on, and, even going back to everybody's favorite Crimson Idol, his interludes in between help move the story along. And just like that, this one helps get it all started. And you know where you're going by the end of it. Pretty simple.
Absolutely.
Better not wearing a jacket.
Andy, any thoughts on Kiss's intro versus Blackie?
Well, it's apples and oranges, right? To me, they're apples and oranges. Even though, let's face it, Blackie Lawless was friends with Ace for a long time. So, and Blackie has even mentioned it a couple of times. I don't know if it's still on their website on the waspnation.com, but Blackie talked about his life and stories and stuff. He always said that he admired like Gene and Paul's relationship and how they did stuff. I think if you look at the Kiss catalog and the W.A.S.P catalog, first 3 albums, then Alive, right? Same thing with W.A.S.P. First 3 albums, then Alive. I think they followed suit. I think Blackie kind of followed the same suit as the Kiss suit. So, but they're apples and oranges, really, because you got, more of the, Kiss is rock, but they're not totally heavy metal. You got W.A.S.P. is more on the metal side. So, but for this song, yes. Blackie's, for the Helldorado, yes, because Inside the Electric Circus is still better than this. But if you really want to look, one of the greatest intros of all time is got to be Detroit Rock City. So when you put that into perspective from the beginning, so I don't know. So it's apples and oranges kind of in that way. But I think still Blackie followed Kiss suit. Watch them, how they did stuff, and I think they did the same thing, But,
Fair enough. There you go. So let's get into the tracks properly. And the first musical track, or the one with lyrics anyway, is the title track, Helldorado. Bill, what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, and that's the thing is, this is where my being impressed started, because it's got that classic W.A.S.P sound, the structures of the songs, if you put them side by side with something off the first 2 albums, and even Electric Circus, they're kind of structured the same way. It's verse, chorus, middle 8 into a solo, and then maybe another chorus on the way out, or maybe another verse. But it's basically just textbook W.A.S.P. And then what was really cool about it was the "It's Not Your Father's Oldsmobile" part, where the Helldorado, and that's the thing is, Helldorado is the I was assuming for reference back to where the Cadillac was the coolest thing around in early rock and roll, because when the guy made it big, when the singer made it big, he was going to get him a Cadillac, and he's going to come put you in the back and blah, 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 and all that. So it's kind of, resurging the original vibe from classic rock and roll. And, buckle up. She's a monster. You're on for a hell of a ride. But the middle 8 in this is just fantastic. I love the way it's assembled. And then it's probably one of Chris's best solos on the whole album. Not to say anything about the other ones, but this is a fantastic solo. Andy?
Yeah, you got to agree with Bill. It's like the thing, Cadillac Dreams, right? That used to be the big thing back in the day. Man, if you made it big, if you all of a sudden you're in a Cadillac and you're driving down the street, we're doing the so I'm not his technician with guitars and basses and drums. I just hear what I hear and like what I like. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And again, I gotta agree with Bill a lot on this one. Not that I don't sometimes, but this song fits. No, this song really fits in with some of the earlier albums. It's straight to the point. We're going to hell, and you're coming with me. You want to take the ride? You want to take the ride to Helldorado? Let's do it, man. This is rock and roll.
We got a driver.
Yeah, we got a driver. Let's do this. You know what I mean? So that's me. And again, Chris's soul. I'll praise Chris on this again, man. Chris Holmes, man, underrated guitarist. Everybody just think, they watched the Western Civilization junk stuff, and that's it. That's all people remember him now by. It's tragic. It's too bad. It's too bad that, the addictions and stuff like that take you. But I'll tell you, man, that guy, the way that guy's tone and the way that guy plays is, it's crazy, man. He's definitely a unique dude.
Yeah, and you just said the magic word, his tone. I love the guitar tone on this album. And I think if I'm going to rank it up there in the catalog, I like this guitar tone as much as the first album. It's got that raw punk, unrestrained. Yeah, I could just see him playing that bumblebee guitar from the Lyceum, 84 show, his classic guitar shredding through these riffs. And Helldorado, I mean, this really is an outstanding track lyrically. The song and the structure of the song, as Bill mentioned, is just absolutely outstanding. But it is just so rock and roll underneath there that, I've mentioned it before that once you get to a certain point in the W.A.S.P catalog, I start hearing a lot of elements from other songs in the catalog. And this one's, while I think it's an outstanding song, I'm hearing, echoes of Show No Mercy in it. So that's probably why I like it so much as well, because you can't go wrong with that one.
And his voice, man, his voice still is, in 1999, man, Blackie's voice is still holding up, man, and he could still rip it. He's just got that voice, man, he can do things with, which it's not like super, super high pitch, but he can still pretty bring it for a guy who's got a deeper voice,
Well, not just guitar tone, but his vocal tone. The way he's singing this, and like you said, he's not going high register, but he's going deep and heavy with his vocals. I'm sure there's some operatic term to describe how he's singing, because Blackie's voice and his vocals on this are just exceptional. And straight out of the gate, you go from that outstanding introduction into this, and it's like it sets the stage and then uppercut. And we're off to the races, literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
All right. Moving on to the ballad, Don't Cry. Just suck.
Well, I guess that tells a story, doesn't it?
I don't know. I'm not too sure what story it's trying to tell, but Bill, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really tell a story. It just gives instructions. But, this is the classic W.A.S.P sexual perversion. Going back to Fuck Like a Beast or, Ball Crusher or something like that. And I had in my notes, the lyrics are a porn script set to music, like the lucky pizza guy who shows up and gets turned out. A couple points are laughable, but what porn isn't? And by the way, the pizza guy never gets turned out. I was a pizza guy for a long time, and I never got that kind of invitation when I come to the door. But the riffs are great, sounds fantastic, and the drums aren't killing me. So it's like, hey, I'm 2 tracks in, and the drums aren't beating me to death. It holds a little bit. There's a little bit more of that digital Blackie guitar, but it fits in really well in the whole mix. If this mix would have happened on KFD, it might be a lot better record. But then again, maybe it wouldn't be. And Chris the solo, he just nails it. It just sounds like classic W.A.S.P. Andy?
Yeah, again, here we go. Agree with Bill, man. This is all right, let's face it, none of us are 16 or anymore. So it's not really like a, I guess I don't know, I might be kind of odd, but I would never like you said, the pizza thing. I don't know. It sounds fine. It's okay, but I'm not 16 and I'm not thinking of like, yeah, don't cry, just suck. You know what I mean? It just, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying without trying to say it? I'm not, not 16. I don't think that way. I don't think I really thought that way even back kind of then. But again, I know it's the W.A.S.P thing. You got to have that old classic W.A.S.P. Screw you kind of.
The one thing about the title is deceptive, because in the 21st century, somebody could take it, be like, the other person in the story is doing something against their will, and that's obviously not the case. Both parties are heading in on congenial terms about what's going to go down in one way or another. But why it's "Don't Cry," I'm not sure, but maybe because it rhymes, or maybe it was a poke in the eye at Axl Rose or something like that. I don't know.
Or a follow-on to "Cries in the Night." maybe.
Well,
Or, overall, I mean, when you look at the kind of the content of this one, yeah, it's perverse. But it's not that much different than KFD in terms of its anger and rage at relationships, just set to a rock and roll theme instead of industrial music. So you kind of get the aggression as well. So it
But
makes
then
sense.
you get coming through your head like the dick on a dog. That's where I couldn't help but laugh at it. But then again, I've been laughing at pornos for 25 years. But yeah, it's just like, come on, really? But it's great.
All right,
Sorry, Julie.
let's move on there. I think I'm gonna get away from that one. We won't stick around. Damnation Angels, which again is something that Blackie for me does very, very well, is his kind of ballady, slower tempo songs. I've already mentioned Cries in the Night, again, Sleeping in the Fire, and Damnation Angels sits right along that style of music very, very well. I will say this, the song is excellent until the outro. And the spoken word ammonia balls ending is terrible and ruins the song for me to the point where I really want to go back and edit that song and chop those off. Bill.
Well, that's the thing is with me listening to it digitally, I just assumed that the ammonia balls bit was basically the prelude to the next song, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I agree with you on a certain point that this is right in the ballpark of the great ballads that Blackie's done, but it takes a minute and a half to get to the first lyric. And it's like, come on, but this song actually, I think the best thing that could be done with it is if it was done acoustically. And then if they just brought in, it's not one of those low volume, high reverb, like Chris Holmes's Halfway Down the Hall guitar solos electric into an acoustic tune. That would have been really great, which would probably be more like a Crimson Idol kind of production. But I think it would suit it better to be acoustic or to have like, Headless Children kind of production on it. I wasn't really greatly keen on it, but as it is, it's kind of a skipper for me. But on the content of the song, could this be a prelude to his spiritual awakening? Where he's actually, because actually your first track you're hearing, yeah, we're going to hell, we're going to have a party, this, that, and the other, and then Damnation Angels is kind of like, it's leaning kind of the other directions, like, well, maybe this isn't necessarily the right thing to do, but it doesn't go full bore into it, but it definitely leans that direction. Andy?
Well, we finally get to disagree because I love this song. I think it's one of the best songs on the whole album, point blank.
All is right with the world. Andy disagrees with me.
Yeah, but it's not like we disagree all the time, but
No.
so far we've been on the same page. But this song, man, I love it. I love that the intro takes that. Like Bill just said, oh, it takes too long before they get into it. I love that. It seems to like gear it up. Here it comes. You're hearing that same meaning coming in your head, just like it's coming. Here it comes. Come on, baby. Here it's coming more.
I was kind of listening to it in a multitasking kind of thing to where I was doing something else. But maybe if I took got into like a Pink Floyd kind of headspace to where I was just sitting back, phones on, eyes closed, it might be a bit different. But
and his
like driving or working or something like that, it was kind of like, but go ahead.
Yeah, his solo, man, is awesome. I think this is one of the best solos off the whole album. I love it. It's just the way it is. It's just got that, I don't know, man, it's that tone and that, and like Julian said, it's not the heaviest song, and it's not the fastest song, but it's just got that, like you said, like the sleeping into the fire kind of mode, It's just got that tempo to it. It's perfect, man. I don't know. He's just awesome, man. It's so cool that, again, Chris Holmes is so underrated as a guitarist. and people need to like pick up this album and just give it a shot if you don't have it. Or it's just his guitar style is awesome, and Blackie's voice again, it's still right on target, and they play this live, and it's so good live too. And that's the other thing too, when they play it live, you know, they played it live for years. I don't know if they're playing it anymore, but they were playing it for years after that. Man, it's just so cool. You know,
Well,
it just got that kind
I
of
won't disagree. The solo's great, but the thing that I was getting about was like the rhythm guitar through it is at like the same volume all the way through. There's not a whole lot of dynamic there. You know, that's like where, like, we'll use Sleeping in the Fire as an example, where Sleeping in the Fire starts off with that real gentle part, and then when that chorus comes in, it's boom and it hits you. I don't hear that in Damnation Angels. But the performances are great, and that's why I thought it would be good, like if the rhythm guitar had been an acoustic, and then they had that real deep down the hallway kind of sound on the solo.
I like your production critique on that, Bill. I think that would be a very interesting alternative arrangement of the song, and also getting into the lyrics a bit sooner. You know, what did Joe Perry say? Don't bore us, get to the chorus. You know, get into the song. Don't have a long-winded intro into it when it doesn't need it.
Andy, like you and your Aerosmith references.
I know. He's gonna throw a jab at me every time. Hey, look at that Aerosmith.
Well, no, it was a valid quote. That it could have been by anyone. All right, next time I'll say it was Michael Schenker. Okay, there we go. Let's move on into. I call this one. My notes are very sparse this week because I was listening to this while working and just jotting down thoughts as they occurred. So I didn't really go into a great deal of depth with my thoughts. Well, not that I ever do. Dirty Balls. I call this another Son of Animal, or A Fistful of Diamonds. You know, this song kept coming on as the album went around, and I then had to go pop in all the other W.A.S.P. W.A.S.P. albums from the early part of their career, because I was like, this sounds like something I've heard. I finally settled on Fistful of Diamonds. Pure sleaze. So I don't care. I don't care if it's a rehash. It is just a sleazy song, and it is, again, what the band did well in the early 80s. And what they could still do well in the late 1990s. And I think this really is the benefit of Chris and Blackie as that team. When a band's got a strong team between the guitar player, the vocalist, I think it benefits the band. Okay? And it all comes together here.
Are you okay, Andy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just had to run for a second.
You look a little lightheaded for some reason.
Nope.
I'm okay. Good deal.
No senior moments while rocking and rolling. Bill.
So I guess I'll start it off with Ammonia Balls, have I? An ode to stank ass pussy. Oh my gosh. I said I'd come up with, I got some sparse, notes too, but the first thing I thought is like gonorrhea is not a laughing matter, or is it? But it is classic waspiness to fit. This would have fit on KFD, I would think, and that would have given you an idea of what maybe KFD would have sounded like with this kind of production. It's lyrically suitable for that anyway. This is the one solo where Chris has kind of an Ace Frehley sloppiness to it. It sounds like, kind of like where Ace would just swing his guitar neck back and forth while he was playing, side to side. And, it's a perfect fit. But I think I need a shot of amoxicillin after listening to this one.
Yeah, and tequila, just to make sure. Now you know what was behind the codpiece, and it was nasty.
Oh,
Andy.
I just, all I could do is laugh at the song. We say classic W.A.S.P, which is kind of weird, that something like Dirty Balls is classic W.A.S.P. I don't know. It's just, where the hell did he come up with this song? I mean, really. Somebody come up to, hey man, my balls are dirty balls. It just, Me, it's definitely Dirty Balls would kind of go in definitely in the mid '80s. You know, the hairband '80s stuff. No matter who it was, that's the way I look at that song.
Yeah, well, that was a big joke. Like if you would read, you'd read articles in like Cream or Circus or something like that. The big joke would be like, "Hey, yeah, we had this show in Poughkeepsie, and so came down with the crabs or something like that." You know, they had those kind of stories back in the '80s about where they would end up poking in somebody in the band for getting the skanky one. But then again, Blackie's saying that the dirty balls are all he needs, and I was like, okay, well, I'd rather have
Whatever floats your boat, bud. You know.
That's why I think
like,
this song is just more of a joke. You know, just kind of
let
silly.
me use them first.
He must have been
Yeah,
thinking about Tipper Gore.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Every single one of these songs is dedicated to the PMRC.
That's why I'm saying that song is definitely, to me, is more of a mid '80s. It's almost like it was like a lost leftover.
Well, yeah,
From
that's why I get Fistful of Diamonds out of it. It's basically the same, other than lyrically, musically. It's a complete rehashing. That's probably why I like it more than I really should. When you think, and it's not one I'm ever going to sing along to, ever. In fact, I want to get off that song because I'm feeling dirty. Moving on, High on the Flames, a very good car analogy or metaphor, whatever you want to go with that. For me, this one is, again, something else that Blackie does well. He gets a good Stones vibe going at the beginning of the song. Very Stonesy in a metal sense. So you can tell where some of his influences are and come from on this kind of clearly. And that's enough of it. The chorus is so catchy. And again, it just goes well with the theme of Helldorado and that demented car high on the flames. You just see a gasoline doused car. I mean, Christine, going down the highway in flames and those flames coming off. And yeah, very, very good visually to me. Bill.
And I grew up in the Midwest, and we had guys driving rust buckets when we were kids. It wasn't nothing to get a buzz off of an exhaust leak or something like that when you're driving along. But back to the song, it's dynamically different than anything that came before it. But it's not. I don't think it's a good opener for side two, because this opens side two on the album. I don't know how it would work out on the tape or whatever. But the structure is pretty cool because it's got two verses and then a chorus, and then it's got the solo, and then it's got two more choruses and then another outro solo, which is really just kind of jumbling up the traditional W.A.S.P formula. And this is another one that would probably be a really good single, because even in its its album form, it's like 451, but it could be easily knocked down to like 327, shortened up for a single for radio. And I think it would have been, well, that's the thing, is if there was rock radio in 1999, that it would have been a good single.
Wait, weren't both those numbers you just threw out engine sizes? I know 327 is.
Did I say? Well, yeah, and then the 327, that's a Chevy big block.
That's a Chevy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all my car knowledge in one song. Andy.
I really like the song too. Like Julian says, it's got a nice hook to it once it gets into it. At first, it's a little rough. Well, I didn't say rough, but at first I go, huh. And all of a sudden, when it gets into it, I'm like, oh yeah,
That's why I'm saying it wouldn't be a good opener, because if you're not getting it in the first 8 bars, if you're not knocking them out. Now, second track, perfect.
Yeah, like I said, when you first listen to it, you go, if you listen to it like, I don't know, just say keep listening to the album for a couple times, 2, 3, 4 times, and you can always get to that song. At first, you kind of go, huh, do I like this? And then all of a sudden it gets into it. Like I said, after X amount, after the first, 30 seconds maybe, then it seems to more get into it, and then it's like getting high off the flame. And I'm like, man, that's cool. It's very catchy. It's in my head now. It's just gonna keep, yeah, like you said, it's got the '80s feel and vibe again. It's got that '80s like, yeah, I'm in the car. Let's go. Let's take the ride. I'm getting high off the planes. Go as fast as we can. Who cares? Let's just drive it and drive and drive until we run out of gas.
Yeah, it's such a shame that we're getting into the obscure W.A.S.P albums now in terms of kind of more widespread knowledge. Most people wouldn't have known that W.A.S.P was even still around, after probably Crimson to a great deal of people out there. And these songs, particularly ones like like High on the Flames, to me are gems that are just buried in a band that was buried commercially and generally, which is a shame.
Well, did Blackie bury himself too? I mean, I don't really, again, we talked about this stuff. He doesn't do like other bands. Well, some bands.
Well, that's the thing.
He had the potential of, maybe merchandising it a little bit because they had that kind of look and they had the thing, and they don't do. Blackie doesn't really do meet and greets, or the band doesn't do meet and greets, and he was like all against all that kind of stuff, and still is, and doesn't like to take pictures. I understand now what he's, his different life now, but even back then, most of the time, I guess he didn't like to do it. So, I think they dropped the ball on that kind of thing, because I think if you do some of that stuff, it helps the other way, right?
Yeah, but this is also closing in on the turn of the century, where some bands from the '80s were not necessarily known for being bands. They were more leaning toward being celebrities. You have Nikki Sixx being a radio talk show host, and you have, Tommy Lee did a show on MTV about going back to college and junk like that. And, which led up to, the Osbournes and Family Jewels and stuff like that. The big rock guys from the '80s weren't being known for being big rock guys. So with Blackie, he probably didn't go down to any of those routes. He probably, he may just not want to. Maybe management said, no, just, we can tour Europe every other year and you can keep your bills paid. And he did something like that and just didn't count on America to be blowing up the bank.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's true too. But you got to have some kind of promotion, man. You can't just say, here's an album, and then all of a sudden you want 8 million people to love you. You got to have some kind of promotion.
I don't think he wanted 8 million people to love him. I think he wanted enough people to buy his albums and appreciate it, on that level without him having to do meet and greets. I can't think of anything worse than having to do meet and greets. I think it's the most horrid thing for an artist to do, but the money's just too good for them to ignore. I think it's just basically torture. And all the other stuff that you've just listed that these artists doing, they all illustrated why they shouldn't do it as well.
Well, why can't they get on? Why didn't they get on tours with other bands that are playing metal bands, even if they weren't the headliner? I don't know if that's an issue with him too, or Blackie, that it's an issue that I'm the headliner. If I'm not the headliner, I'm not going to play. But if you look at some of the festivals they play overseas, they're not the headliner. There's been times they're really like, the highest one, and then they're like 6th or 7th, and and then there's way bands lower than them. When you have like 50 bands playing, they'd be like the 6th before the top, So they weren't always the headliner. So I don't understand why they couldn't have jumped on bigger tours. I mean, again, yeah, in the late 90s, 99, 2000, 99, 2000, right? Yeah, how many tours were there? Heavy metal tours. Well, there's always a heavy metal. There's
that's
always
the
going
thing.
to be.
Is in 99 and 2000, bands that were heavy didn't want to be called heavy metal, and promoters would see it where, it's like if you have like Lamb of God, for example, if somebody was like Lamb of God with W.A.S.P or something like that, where they're like, well, that with W.A.S.P, that's that cheesy Blind in Texas band or whatever, it would be a detrimental effect for promoters to sell tickets. But even through the 90s, like bands that are considered metal-ish bands now, they were actually knocking down the metal genre and actually talking shit about them a lot in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Mm.
And then you look at the audiences when W.A.S.P is performing in Europe, and they are just, going nuts for that Blind in Texas stuff, and everything else. So maybe the answer's in the next song, Cocaine Cowboys. That was a terrible segue, but there we go. I'll start us off on this one. And, apart from the title, which I think is so crap, this is the style of W.A.S.P I always loved musically. It's rip, roaring, rock and roll in exactly what you guys just mentioned, Blind in Texas style. And it's just chalk, again, guitars. There's a certain amount of joy that I kind of feel in the performance of Chris all throughout this album. And Blackie as well for, his guitar contributions. There is just like no restraints. They're just playing. And it has a very kind of, heavy metal Chuck Berry-ness going with it. That it's just loose. Play the hell out of that guitar. It's going a little bit out of tune here. It's, reverbing there. There's a bad pick off a string there. It is rock and roll. Everything about it. This is one of my favorite songs on the album. Bill.
Sorry, I had to find my mute button. Yeah, I would agree 100%. And like where I was talking about the last track not being the great opener, this one would have been a banger to start off that second side of the record. And it's classic W.A.S.P sound, structure. The progression going into the final chorus is a little left of center, but it's really cool. And it's just a classic. I mean, to coin classic W.A.S.P burner. And I think it would have been and it's a great second track, but it would have been a better first track on side 2.
Yeah, nice. Andy.
It's okay for me. It's not the greatest one on the whole album. It does have that sound to it, but it's just not my, I don't know, just not my cup of tea on that one. It's okay. It's not my favorite. It's not my least favorite, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's not a burner for you. So why don't you start us then with "Can't Die Tonight," the next song?
Oh, this is where I kind of lose it.
In a good way or a bad way?
Bad way. This is not. No. This is just not. I don't know. I just the next couple of ones, man, it went from being like really, really top notch to all of a sudden it's just like slowly falling off the hill.
Are you saying that there was too much octane on the first 6 tracks? I mean, that you've gotten a little unleaded now?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, for me, and yeah, I'm going to say that. Yeah, a little bit unleaded. Again, it's not the. Yeah, it's not the. Yeah, I'm speechless right now. It's not the best thing. It's not the worst, but it's not even that. It's kind of like I said. You're going from now. I went from going from Cocaine Cowboys, and now we're going to Can't Die Tonight. So I'm taking as I'm going down, the steps keep going. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I got.
So for Andy, we've gone from the 327 Chevy to the Prius.
Oh,
musically.
No, it gets worse.
Let's not go that far yet. He's still on the 4-cylinder Ford Escort engine.
Bill, well, what do you think about Can't Die Tonight?
Can't Die Tonight, I really didn't write anything down about it musically because what stood out to me more, and this may be what's turning Andy off, is that if there's not a concept through this entire album, there's definitely a theme. And this song basically describes, where he may be having second thoughts further on about, this is a great ride, but it's not going to last forever. And please don't let it happen tonight. It's kind of a moody change, and I can see where Andy's coming from on it, because I would think that the theme about it, the first 4 W.A.S.P albums, they didn't have themes to them. Well, the fourth one did, but The first three, you know, they were just kind of banger, 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 banger. But this one here, you know, you've got six bangers and a spoken word bit. But then here, all of a sudden, you're going into turn three, back to our car references, and all of a sudden you hit a theme, and it's like, oh well, I mean, all this fun I've been having for the first six tracks isn't what I should be wanting to do, or whatever. And you know, where the subject of the song is seeing the party coming to an end.
Yeah, it's like it just disappears. All of a sudden, it's like this song is just it's like it's there. You know, that's all it is. It's just there. It's not bad, not great, but just not there. That's how, to me, it's like, oh yeah, I can't. Oh yeah, that's right. This song is on this CD. That's how I look at it. You know, I'll listen to it, but because I don't really skip stuff too much. But I mean, it's just there for me.
Yeah.
You know, just sign the same thing. I don't know, just there.
And while I still think it's a good song, I just don't think it. It is kind of a bit of a shock from just the bangers going to this thematic nature. But yeah, I wouldn't skip it. That's for sure.
I won't skip it. Again, I've mentioned a couple of, you know, other like bands that come through in what I'm hearing here. And I like something on this song in particular, and it is the rhythm guitar that's just chunking in the background like Malcolm Young. It's very AC/DC-ish. And that's probably why I like it so much more than maybe I ought to, because I'm hearing that element in the background. That was what he was just very, very good at. And that, again, the guitar tone of that rhythm guitar in particular, it is thick and juicy, and it just grinds throughout. So that's an element that jumped out, and, you know, enough for me to write it down. So I'm going to take for it what you will. Moving on. Saturday Night's All Right for Cockfighting. Yeah, I didn't even write anything down about this. I just couldn't. I mean, what?
Why?
I mean, where is he? Indonesia? Yeah, it's just, where does someone get? Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get cockfighting. I don't get, you know, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. Elton John had it nailed. Just leave it there. This one, the lyrics don't make any sense. It's just, it's the dud on the album for me. So, Bill.
Well, I'm from the Midwest, and I don't think he's attending the same kind of event that I'm familiar with when it comes to that term. It definitely, it leans to being in a sexual nature, and I'm kind of like, well, wait a second, you know, are you talking like a sword fight, which I'm not down with either. But yeah, I mean, this was probably a skipper for me. You know, this would be one where I might just pull the plug on it. Well, no, we got one more track, so yeah, I ain't just gonna skip the last track. But yeah, this would be a skipper to just go ahead and get us out the door with the last track.
Yeah, it's do or die, an eye for an eye. That's kind of leading towards a sword fight. Andy.
Oh, we got one-eyed monster here, or what?
Yeah, the one-eyed wonder worm, right? I agree. It's a total bummer, letdown. Again, the thing went from really, really good to, like, all of a sudden it's like, okay, I've run out of ideas. That's it. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I've run out of ideas. That's it. Here you go.
And it's the thing that it's so lyrically bad that none of us discussed what the music's like. How bad does a song have to be? You know, I mean, that puts it like, I can't even think of a song that's so lyrically bad that I can't think about the music or the melody or something. But yeah, I mean, it's so lyrically bad, we've just washed away whatever. You know, that might have been Stet Howland's drumming, you know, masterpiece, and it got screwed up by the lyrics.
Yeah, he's trying to sing so fast too, and that's not. I don't know. To me, that's not Blackie Lawless.
He's embarrassed by the lyrics, so he's trying to get them out quicker.
I don't know. it definitely. I guess. Oh my God, the three of us just went boof, bomb.
He should have got him out on garbage day.
Yeah. That's
And
this song is proof of why cutting room floors exist.
Well, I mean, maybe maybe they just need to be kind of like the fill. Oh, I mean, of course, the fillers, but I don't know. Maybe just like you said, maybe just like kind of like a leftover. But hey, man, I'm just going to put her on because, they were always Black was always famous. Well, you put on an album and then all of a sudden you would see like a 45 or a picture disc or something, and he's got, couple songs, and then he's got, oh yeah, these were left on the cutting room floor, so I'm going to put them on the B side. Here you go, sell that. And then the next one, he do the same thing. So they would do this kind of weird, you guys ever remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that? And W.A.S.P was, I mean, Blackie or whoever did that, they did that a lot back then. They put it like, I want to be somebody, and then they like put on the flip side, and then they put like Mississippi Queen and then another song, or whatever, So they would put all these, and they would keep doing it. And that was one thing I was like, wow, Blackie lost this. He had a lot of B sides,
Yeah,
That's why
there are a ton.
Like Van Halen, what did Van Halen put on the flip side of Hot for Teacher? Little Dreamer, which should have been a single off the first album to start with. Van Halen didn't fool around with putting out, oh, well, here, let's jam on this cover tune or something like that, or put something substandard on the B side, because they were kind of raised into the point where, or they were part of the generation where you had double A sides, where you had Beatles tracks that both sides of the record made it into the charts, or the Stones or something like that, all the way up to Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody and We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. They were both in the chart at the same time on separate entries because of the song, because they were that quality. And
yeah, and I remember Blackie saying something when they put on the B side that they don't get paid for it anyways. So they just slap on the song that they don't think it's going to do anything in the first place. So
publishing circles, I've heard that the like going back to the Monkees, if we can go way back, that Kirshner. Hey, don't bag on my monkeys, man. I love my monkeys, but it would be a bargaining chip for the record producer. He'd say, well, Andy, I love your song, and Julian, I love your song, but I think Andy's is going to be the bigger hit, but I'm going to get you on the B side, which will get you, it's kind of chump change in comparison to the single. But then again, how did the chump change pay off when they flipped over Detroit Rock City?
Exactly.
All of a sudden they started playing Beth, and Beth is pulling in more money than the actual single track was. So I don't think that I'm surprised that it's a don't get paid kind of situation, but that's something deep going into music business that even I'm not familiar with.
Or maybe like you said, like chump change. Maybe it's like so nickels and pennies and dime quarters or something, And besides, how many records nowadays like the B side does better than the A side? Probably nothing. It's not like those days.
There are no A sides or B sides now. They just put out single songs, and they're just fodder. They'll just
that's the thing is either they're just fodder or they completely blow up. Do you know who the who the top single artist is in the world at this time?
That Kid band, right? Isn't it that Kid's band?
Nope, it's a solo. His name's
Taylor?
Drake.
Oh,
his name is Drake. Because what Drake did, he put out a 12 or 15 song album and released every one of them to iTunes as a single. So if they didn't want to go buy the whole album, he released the whole. He's done that to a couple records, and he is actually the highest charting single artist because he's got all of these. He's beat out the Beatles, he's beat out the Stones.
But he obviously had enough songs that were good enough to be singles that hit, right?
Well, that's the thing about it, though, is you're dealing with something like iTunes, if they had a good 30-second clip, it could be a turd for the other 2.5 minutes. But if people bought into the clip, I don't know if the album sales would equate into like 12 singles or not. But then you have, we are back into a singles market. That's like, well, people's like, well, why aren't you releasing full albums versus EPs or, we're just releasing singles because people are buying the singles. People will give $1.29 for a single when they don't want to have to go out and pay $9.95 for that single plus 8 other songs that they're probably not interested in. But Drake took advantage of that market and just rolled in the cash, and he's a top dog in the music industry because he did that.
Yeah, but how do you know that you're not going to like the other songs? What happens if you like the first single that comes out and you say, I wonder if the rest says this one sounds so good. So you're going to turn around.
That comes with digital previewing now because anybody who sells songs online worth their oats is offering a preview. And even people who aren't selling it, they are offering a preview. But
I'll buy it. If I'm considered a real fan, I'm going to buy it. Right?
But Period. If you got 9 people that live on your block and each one of you likes a different song, then it's basically like selling an album, because you buy the one you like, your neighbor buys that one, the guy across the street buys another one, and it's not having to depend on that total album sale to generate the revenue.
Yeah, and that's where the industry was kind of heading. I mean, you remember all these bands saying we're not doing albums anymore, we're just going to do singles or EPs. So it's kind of come around full circle from where it was in the 50s. Let's move on into the last track before we get into the music industry podcast. Hot Rods to Hell, the Helldorado reprise. My singular note on this is it's the culmination of an album that's like an album full of rock and rolls to death. If you remember the best of and then obviously the re-recording on Still Not Black Enough, Blackie Lawless is a great rock and roller. And that's just what this song is a great conclusion to a rock and roll album with a steaming rock and roll song. And rock and roll to death indeed. Andy?
Yeah, I like this song. It's not, Lisa didn't like this. It didn't totally drop off. It's not like the two before. But, it's okay. It's all right. I like it, but it's not like, it's not one of my highest ones on the whole album. So that's the way it is for me. So, I mean, but it's all right. It kind of seems like almost seems like, I don't know if this one came out before the Helldorado. You know what I'm saying? Is this just like, did he go back and say, wait a minute, I think this is better than the basically second song or first song off the album, let reprise it. I don't know if it's before or after. So to me, it's okay. But I'd say when it says Helldorado reprise, I still number 2. You know what I mean? I'd rather listen to the first, number 2 on the album because the drive-bys aren't technically a singing song. So anyways, it's okay, but it's not in the top for me.
Bill.
Okay, and I'm going to go right off of my notes on this one. I said, on this closer, Blackie pulls out every classic rock and roll trope and wraps it in wrapping paper. From the Chuck Berry arrangement to the Who's It's All Rights and to the Beatles' Yeah, Yeah, Yeahs and to Robert Johnson's Crossroads confrontation. He took everything that was rock and roll about rock and roll since before it was called the blues and wrapped it up in a W.A.S.P wrapping paper. And while it's not top of the heap, it's still a good listen. And it's as my friend A.D. Adams likes to say, it's got the bougie to it. There's nothing you can top with, of all the songs that you can take a boogie to and reproduce it in a different genre, metal is the genre to bougie to. So I like the bougie woogie on it.
So rock and rolls to death, literally the kitchen sink.
I was laughing when you started off about that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is one me and Julian's on the money with. So
yeah,
and I'm not you're wrong. I'm just saying that we're in agreement on it.
Yeah, we're just going in the same direction from different angles. All right, let's wrap up with our favorite 3, because I think we don't need to cover our least favorite, as we're all pretty unanimous in our derision for one song. May you do what? Yes, you certainly can, Andy.
Can I just throw in this? I got lucky to see this tour. So I'll just say, everybody, I was able to see the tour. It was Chris Holmes at his wildest as usual, and Blackie at his craziness. And I think it was Stet was played drums, and you had Mike Duder on bass. It was a good show. It was a great show. It just saw him. I wish I had a ticket. I don't have a ticket stub because basically that tour was very weird here in the United States at the time. This is how weird that tour was. So they played in New Jersey on 3/3/2000, year 2000. Then they didn't play until 5/3/2000 in Maine, up in Maine. Then I didn't get and that was it. And then all of a sudden, here they are. I saw them on 8/3/2000. That's how much their sporadic jumped. How do you make money off that? I don't know. That is very, very odd in that tour. But
so they close the show and they say, "We'll see you on the 3rd."
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. You'll see you on your 3rd, and then 2 months later, we'll see you on the 3rd again. 2 months later, at a whole up in Maine, from California all the way to Maine, or wherever. And then turn around 5, 6, 7, 8. 3 months later, again, it started back up, and that's where I saw him down at the place that everybody knows that the tragic happened at the station down in Rhode Island. Basically, me and a buddy went. It was last minute. Didn't even know. It was kind of like. I think it might have just all of a sudden we heard this radio thing because back then, still most of the stuff was on the radio. It was very hard to hear anything about W.A.S.P. period. And then all of a sudden, me, the buddy went down, paid I think, $20 to get in, I think it was. And then it's that place, if you've ever been there, tragic though. Basically, you had to walk in, paid, you walked in. I remember you take a right. You went down like a hall, and the hall was probably like 50 feet or something like that. So it's just a hall, and you could barely get 2 people through there. And then you took a left, and then that's the area. And basically, when the bands played, Blackie still had his high heels on and Chris and stuff. When they came out, man, their heads were almost hitting the ceiling. So they, Chris had to keep bending further down than you usually, that he's always, doing that thing going like this. He had to bend down even further, and Blackie had to be very careful about hitting it because he had the higher heels on, hitting his head because they only had probably this much room left before hitting their heads on the ceiling. So that place was very, very small, but the show was really, really good and really, really loud. But it was awesome. I loved it. I'm glad I got to go see it. So that's all.
I'm curious about one thing, from the station. Obviously, we all know about the Great White Show and that absolutely horrendous night and the lingering effects of that across the music industry because it reverberated. When you watch the Sting online and the clips that you can still see on YouTube, Blackie starts off the show by setting his W.A.S.P. logo on fire. Did they do that as part of the Helldorado tour that you saw? So there was, I mean, that just makes me shiver having seen that, when watching the Sting, and you just now mentioning that you saw a W.A.S.P. and I was like, oh my God, did they light that thing on fire there?
No, so small, the stage, the thing area, no, they didn't have it there. And if they did, I don't know, I probably would have lost all my hair. I mean, I had more hair back then. I probably would have lost it. I probably would have been bald. That place is so small and packed. It was super packed. It's general mission. We were just crammed in like sardines. It was, it's the old general mission kind of shows, So again, it was awesome.
So even W.A.S.P. was smart enough not to use pyro at the station.
Well, the place is so small, man. I don't even think they could fit it on the stage. I think they just basically had the drums. And
Did they have Elvis?
I don't remember if they even had Elvis. They might not. I don't know if he had Elvis at the time, to be honest. I can't even remember because it was just, I don't think so. Oh, maybe. Actually, you know what? He had Elvis, but he didn't swing. They just let it sit there all night.
Would have knocked the walls down.
Knock the walls down, knock us out, because the stage, I mean, even though they had a stage, the stage wasn't that big, and, it wasn't like a big wall stage. It's just like here, I'm at my knees, That's all it was. There wasn't much to it. You probably could have grabbed the guys and just pulled them in. That's how much. That's how small that place was to be able to grab.
I'm absolutely shocked, Andy, from your descriptions of this joint, how the station disaster ever happened, how anyone in their right mind could ever have lit. I mean, here you are describing a place, and I've been to some places, even in San Francisco, to see shows that I have actually left because they felt like death traps. I mean, this is all post-station that I'm more aware now that when I'm going down like a rabbit warren to get into where I'm going to see the show, and then there's a single door all the way behind me and maybe another one up beside the stage, I'm like, forget it. I'm packed in. I'm out.
I don't, and I understand, it's sad. It was sad and tragic to get out of that place. There's not many, if I can remember right, they said there's maybe, on the stage or behind stage. I don't know any of that stuff, so there's probably next, but getting the hell out of there to get out the front door, you have to go through that, you would have had to go through that crowd, go down that hall. I don't know. I don't even know if it's 50 feet. It could be 30 feet, but 30 feet is a long way. Just a straight
and
little
smoke and panic as well. I mean, come on.
It's complete chaos, panic. I can understand. I don't understand, but I understand why people it just happened, And if those people knew, like I said, even me and my buddy, man, we were in there like sardine cans. So even if something happened, you're like trying to turn, you couldn't move. You know what I mean? So it was very hard to say. It's tragic, just tragic about that stuff. Well, anyways, I know you want to get going, but
yeah.
So that was station because I think, I can't even remember off the top of my head when that happened. That happened when? I can't remember when the tragic happened.
Yeah, I don't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, but it wasn't too long after. I think it was maybe 4, 5, 6 months, maybe something like that, if I remember right. And I get phone calls at 3:00 in the morning. People call me, "Oh my God," and you're back then. I didn't have a cell phone, so leaving messages or trying to pick up the phone when they called, and then I'm calling other people and I'm like, "No, I didn't go to see. Did you go?" And then you calling other people, "Did you go?" So everybody's trying to wake each other up to see if they actually went.
Well, let's wrap up our W.A.S.P episode because we can always do a show about Great White and some of the rock and roll disasters. But what are your 3 favorite tracks off the album, Andy?
I love Damnation Angels. That's my favorite off the whole album. Helldorato's number 2, and I'm High on the Flames. Sorry, I'm going blank there. High on the Flames. I'm high on the flames. So those are my top 3.
Nice. Bill, what about you?
Definitely Helldorado and High on the Flames, and I still like Cocaine Cowboys. I still think I would have been just an ass kicker just to go up the record.
All right, I'm with you on Cocaine Cowboys. Hot Rods to Hell reprise at the end. Great closing track. And it's so tough to pick. There are 6 very, very strong songs. I'm going to go with the Helldorado opening musical track. Just fantastic. Great rip-roaring rock and roll. I've already said that one. But a lot of good stuff on this. If you haven't listened to this album, the whole thing's up on YouTube or Spotify probably for streaming. You can check it out. You don't have to go buy a $2.99 used CD either, which is what mine is.
Why not?
But you can, if like Andy said, why not? Go check out this album. We're into the part of the catalog now that you may not be familiar with a lot of these songs, these albums, but hopefully we've said something today about one of these songs that makes you want to go, what on earth are they talking about, and go check it out for yourself, because that's ultimately what we hope the response to this episode and any that we do is that you check out something new or you revisit something old, which has been the case for me, and I've thoroughly enjoyed doing so. So for now, from Andy, from Bill, myself, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time when we talk about, we'll either do the live albums or we'll go straight into the next studio album. Who knows? We hope to see you then. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to us, like us, or even leave us a review. You can find us and join the conversation on Facebook.